Well, good morning, Rotary District 7770, and welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Monday, June 7th, 2021. Can you believe we're already in June, folks? I think the year just started like last week. Fast. Hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We sure have missed you. This is our first CWRAP in 2 weeks, so no pressure to our speaker, but I understand she is going to truly deliver an amazing presentation, and we're all going to learn something. So introducing our speaker from the Aiken County Cooperative Extension Service of Clemson University, Valerie Bertagnolli. We look forward to her presentation in a minute, but first up for some announcements. And if I made a mistake, I tried to pronounce it. I did my best. Rotary, we can't accuse anyone of saying the wrong thing. So I did the best I could. Living by the four-way test. All right, here we go. Introducing our public image chair from the 5 Points Rotary Club in Columbia, the wonderful Mary Gass. Mary, thank you for setting up today's speaker. And folks, okay, it's June. So typically in summer, people travel. Maybe this year you may want to travel more than you did last year because of the pandemic. So if you've got a trip planned over the summer, we know you may be going to the International Convention in Taiwan virtually, but we want to know where else will you be possibly going in person over the summer. Now, some of you may be coming to Myrtle Beach this week for the golf tournament. Put that in there, but we want to see how far away our Rotarians will go. And then if you go on a trip, remember, we do these CWRAPs on Monday, and you can virtually join us from wherever you are and show us where you are. So I'll even put something in the chat because I've got two trips planned. So with that being said, I will read Vicky's bio and we'll get to her presentation. She is the Consumer Horticulture Agent, Master Gardener Coordinator, Private Pesticide Applicator Training Coordinator. Okay, let's all stop and say that 3 times fast. Here we go. All right, and local bug geek. A bug geek. So we need to introduce her to the Rotary geek, right? All right, here we go. In Aiken County, she makes regular monthly appearances on SCETV's gardening show, Making It Grow. Prior to joining Clemson University as an extension agent in January of 2008, Vicky spent 7 years as the research technician for Auburn University's Alabama Fire Ant Management Program, and also worked part-time for a small pest control company. Vicky's area of expertise are imported fire ants and their management, urban pest management, and using integrated pest management, school IPM, and insect identification. Going forward, I need the ABC version of bios. This is very technical here. So without further ado, good morning, Vicky.
Hi, guys. All right, so let's see if we can make this happen. I hope y'all are actually interested in insects. We're going to find out. Okay.
While you're getting that up, I see we got to go to Maine, Nashville, Florida, Connecticut. All right, I see your screen.
Some fun places.
I see your screen, so you're good.
All right, so I've been doing these Zooms for a while now. So if you guys have a question, type it into the chat box. I'm pretty decent at catching them, so we should be okay that way. Just so y'all know, I may have a weird way that I'm looking at y'all. I may not look directly at you because I have 2 screens, and some people find it weird, but we're going to talk about mosquitoes of the Southeast, and we're going to talk about some biology and management. And mosquitoes are really important insects. Everybody knows exactly what they are. There's no confusion about what a mosquito is. And according to the CDC, we're going to, over the trend over the last 13 years is they have seen disease cases from infected mosquitoes, ticks, and fleas. They've tripled. So that you guys can see the numbers on this graph, from 2004, that number right there is 27,388. The number in 2016 is 96,075. So illnesses from mosquitoes, ticks, and flea bites, they're definitely on the rise. This graphic shows the disease cases from mosquitoes that were reported from 2004 to 2016. And in South Carolina, there were 312 reported cases from mosquitoes. So when you're looking at mosquitoes, you don't necessarily, laymen don't necessarily think of them as a fly, but these are an insect in the fly order. Do y'all remember your kingdom, phylum, order, class, all that kind of stuff? You use King Philip came over from Germany singing. That's your mnemonic to remember you know how you have Roy G. Biv? So we're using the mnemonic. King Philip came over from Germany singing. Well, these guys are in the order Diptera. They are a fly, so they have 2 wings. Di means 2. Most of your other insects have 4 wings, so 2 pair. But for flies, they have a modified hind pair of wings. They're called halteres, and they're gyroscopic stabilizers. So it's really cool that way. But so they are in the family Culicidae, and we'll talk about that in a second. But mosquitoes are the best known group of insects because of the importance to man as a pest. And so we're going to research what bothers us. And they're also medically and economically important because they're vectors of animal and human diseases. Now, I told you guys that they're in the order Diptera. They're in the family Culicidae, and for all of these different species worldwide, there's only the one family. There's 2 subfamilies, but there's only one family. Worldwide, there's about 46 different genera, and more than this, the slide says 3,500, but that was in 2013. The number's been updated to there's more than 3,700 described species. In our area, we've got about 174. In South Carolina, we've got right at 60 species of mosquito. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things, where are mosquitoes found? And they're found everywhere. We can see them everywhere. They're in almost every imaginable habitat, from the icy tundra of northern Canada to the deserts of the American Southwest to the humid tropics of Africa, Asia, South America. They're absolutely everywhere. And so there's an agent here from Alaska, and you think, oh, cold weather, no mosquitoes. Not true. You go to Alaska, you will still get eaten up by mosquitoes, and apparently they are bird size. So this, I think, is a really pretty way to frame mosquitoes. Whenever you put them with a flower, it makes them pretty. But the point of this slide is to tell you that all mosquitoes, whether they're male or female, feed on nectar for energy. So in our heads, we think mosquitoes, they only drink blood, and this is the way it works, and it's not. All mosquitoes feed on nectar for energy. But only the female mosquitoes bite. And something you'll notice on these slides is I tried to put the name of the mosquito on there. I'm not going to reference every single one of them. I'm going to hit about 5 different species in this talk. But I just wanted y'all to see some of the different ones that are out there. Lou's talking about the mosquitoes in Canada, and the Canada lakes are so big that they'll take you down. So it's like a pterodactyl. Not all mosquitoes need a blood meal to produce their first batch of eggs, but they may need that blood meal later to produce later batches. And a lot of these mosquitoes, they're going to feed on different stuff. They're going to feed on humans, birds, reptiles, amphibians. And of the mosquitoes that are in the US, about half of those feed mostly on mammals. About a third of them feed mostly on birds. And then there's a few that feed mostly on reptiles and amphibians. And then some don't really care and they'll feed on any animal that they can encounter. Now, we're going to talk about a little bit about reproduction and how they move. And we kind of think that they're just ubiquitous. They're everywhere. But the thing is that they don't like to travel. Their flight only ranges between 1 and 3 miles from where they hatched. An amazing example of this is Aedes aegypti, which I'm going to show you guys in a little bit. This is the yellow fever mosquito. They only move within 400 meters. That's a quarter of a mile. That's not far at all from their breeding site. So we have to remember all of the breeding sites that are out there, and we're going to talk about that too. How in the heck do they find us? Because it seems like they're everywhere, but they're using movement, the heat sensing, the carbon dioxide that we exhale, and that helps the mosquitoes find us. I don't know if you guys y'all heard it in the news, that it's blood type, and it's not necessarily tied to blood type, but they can smell certain pheromones and things like that. But it's mostly movement, heat, and sensing the carbon dioxide that they can find us. And that works a lot with a lot of different insects. One of them in particular that comes to mind right off the top of my head are fleas. Fleas work that way too. Now, this slide right here, don't let it scare you, but this is a list of some of the major diseases that mosquitoes vector. The ones that are listed on DHEC's website are West Nile virus, Triple E, which is Eastern equine encephalitis. SLE is St. Louis encephalitis. LAC is La Crosse encephalitis, and then heartworms. That's dog heartworms and cat heartworms. They do transmit Diphtheria immitis. Now, our first mosquito that we're going to show you guys is the yellow fever mosquito. This is Aedes aegypti, and this thing has been in the US for over 200 years, and it is responsible for some of the major epidemics that were happening in the southern United States in the 19th and the early 20th centuries. It's not a particularly large mosquito. Let me tell you something about size. When I am gauging size, I'm gauging that with an entomology mind, not gauging it with a layman's mind. So to me, this is not a particularly large mosquito. To you guys, it may still seem like a bird, but it's not one of the larger ones out there. But the way that you recognize it, you can see in the inset, there's a circular inset in there. There's a lyre-shaped pattern of scales on the scutum. And that's one of the ways that you identify this. But the males and females they look the same. And most of the current range is going to be along the Gulf Coast. And this thing has been displaced by Aedes albopictus, which is the Asian tiger mosquito. This one right here. This is Aedes albopictus. This is your Asian tiger mosquito. And this one was first reported in Houston in the mid-'80s, but they were finding populations in 1986 all over Texas. So they know that it had been here prior to whenever it was first reported. So it's one of those things. Now, this mosquito is different than some of your other ones because a lot of your other ones are going to be biting you typically dawn, dusk type times. This one is a day feeder. That's what makes this one so bad. And it's large, but it's easily recognizable, and it's because of the what they call tiger stripes on the legs. These are Anopheles mosquitoes. There's about 400 species worldwide. There's about 15 species of Anopheles in our area. And we recognize Anopheles mosquitoes because they transmit malaria. Now, one way that whenever you see this mosquito and you're trying to ID it, it's because the palps, so those aren't extra legs. Look at the bottom picture. That's not all legs. You see the head over on the right side, and then there's some mouth parts, and then you've got the palps. And so it looks like there's 4 sets of extra legs up there, but they're really not. And so that's one way that you identify Anopheles mosquitoes. And this is a really important mosquito, not just here in America, but worldwide, just because it's killing 1.5 to 2.7 million people per year just from malaria. Then we have the Culex mosquitoes, and these are found worldwide and throughout North America. And the way that you identify these is when you're looking at them, they have a very blunt abdomen, which is kind of unusual for a mosquito. So if we look at these Anopheles, they have a relatively pointy abdomen. But when you're looking at the Culex species, the tip of their abdomen tends to be blunt. The bad thing about Culex species is that they're found year-round, even in northern latitudes. This is one of my favorite ones just because the scientific name is Culex quinquefasciatus. There's, to me, everybody has a favorite scientific name. This is not exactly my favorite scientific name, but it's a pretty fun one. But the thing about Culex mosquitoes is that some of them are vectors of organisms that cause diseases like West Nile, Triple E, and dog heartworm disease. This one, don't be scared of this one. So to give you some scale, those are my fingers, and that's on my middle finger right here. This one right here, this is the shaggy-legged galley nipper. This is a Saurophora species. And this one happens to be the largest blood-sucking biting mosquito in the US. But the larvae are predators and feed on other mosquitoes and other aquatic invertebrates. So it's actually kind of cool. But there's 13 different species in the continental US. And the Saurophora, the females feed almost exclusively on mammals. They're actually pests more of livestock. But out of those 13 species, there's only one of them that's known to be a vector. So I've seen some people asking, Lou's been asking, what is the mosquito's purpose? So it's like, what's the, like a, you know, what was that movie? Was it a dog's purpose? Is that what that movie was called? But you're kind of wondering, what is the purpose of mosquito? Because all they do is seem just completely annoying. But under most conditions, there's predators and parasites that suppress the scale insect populations. And so you don't have to use biological control, which is really cool. But some of the things that they do is that mosquitoes serve as a food source in most of your ecosystems for small fish, tadpoles, aquatic insects, and crustaceans. And then those little things are feeding larger fish and birds. And then that benefits us. We're benefiting humans because we got game, we got wildlife, you know, seed dispersers. This is great. Then they're also pollinators, because remember, I told you guys that they're feeding on nectar. They may not be efficient pollinators, but they are pollinators. Then you have some that are predators. And this is one of them that's a predator. This is Toxorhynchides. This is a cannibal or elephant mosquito. And this one does not feed on blood because they receive enough resources from their larval diet to produce eggs. So as larvae, they get enough energy so that as adults, after they go through their life cycle, they can produce eggs. These larvae are predators that eat other mosquito larvae and small aquatic organisms. And then the adults feed on flower nectar. But it's a large mosquito. Now, y'all are asking about pesticides, and every time you're going to have an extension agent come talk to you guys and they mention a pesticide, they're going to tell you to read the label. The label is the law. So whenever you read the label, you want to read the entire label, understand and comprehend the label, and then follow all those label instructions. And so we're going to talk about repellents. And there's a website you can go to. It's EPA's website. It's called Find the Repellent That's Right for You. And you put in there and you tell them how long you're going to need it, like less than 4 hours, 5 to 8 hours, things like that. And it will tell you which products will work for you. Now, whenever you're using a product, you want to make sure that you're reading the label, but repellents are meant to be put on the skin or clothing, but not under your clothing. So if you're wearing a shirt, you can spray it on your shirt, but you don't have to spray it on your skin and your shirt. But please don't spray it in your face. You want to avoid inhaling it or ingesting it. And be careful if you're using this on an animal. Don't use it on a pet unless they actually tell you that it's safe for the pet. So the best way to control mosquitoes are going to be removing larval habitat. It says remove mosquito habitat, and in our heads we're thinking the adults, but this is the biggest thing is larval habitat control. So we want to remove any standing water in gutters. There are some really great pictures that I have of somebody that has a carport with a corrugated roof, and there's a whole bunch of pine straw that's backed up on the edge of it, and the water's collecting in there. And a lot of these mosquitoes can breed in the amount of water that you can put in a Coke bottle top. And I mean, it's not a lot of water. And so you want to be mindful and eliminate that standing water. Drain anything, especially that's temporary, or you can fill it with dirt. We had an issue next door to me where a house went into foreclosure and their in-ground pool had turned into a major mosquito haven, and we ended up calling DHEC because we needed some help with that. So whenever you're removing habitat, you want to make sure that you're emptying and changing the bird baths, the fountains, the wading pools, the rain barrels, and also the trays for your potted plants at least once a week. Because depending on the mosquito, they have complete metamorphosis. So they have egg, larvae, pupa, adult. The adult females are going to lay the eggs either at the water surface, on the water surface, or they're going to stick it to a substrate. So they can stick it to the bird bath. Sometimes they can stick it to a piece of vegetation. If it's one of the species of mosquitoes that is a flood plain mosquito or a flood zone mosquito, they lay their eggs, the water goes down, and then the water comes back up, the eggs get rehydrated, and they come back out. So because they have adapted this way, and because they can stick their eggs to the substrate, you need to be scrubbing these things before you're just dumping out the water. You really should scrub them. Always make sure that your swimming pool is being treated and that the water in there is circulating. We've got some mosquitoes that don't do well whenever the water surface moves. They're called nervous feeders. And so they'll, as long as the water's moving, you can help keep them away from laying eggs in the water. Whenever we're trying to manage our mosquitoes, we want to make sure that we're using an appropriate method for the habitat. So make sure that you are using something that is labeled appropriately for where you are using it. If you're using something in a pond, it needs to make sure that it's labeled for a pond. If it's labeled for a rain barrel, you can use it for a rain barrel. In our landscapes, we can use it's a brand, but you can use mosquito dunks. They have there's a bacterium in it. It's called Bacillus thuringiensis israeliensis. Makes me sound really smart, doesn't it? But it's a race of bacterium that attacks these. It is israeliensis is particularly for flies. So there's BT for caterpillars, there's BT for grubs, there's BT for mosquitoes. And the BT that we're using, Bacillus thuringiensis, for flies is israeliensis. Something else you need to think about is if they are coming into your house. So we want to eliminate larval habitat outside, but then we want to keep the adults out of our house. So we want to make sure and cover up all the gaps in the walls and the doors and in the windows, make sure that the screens fit tight and everything's in good working order. And if you have something like a rain barrel, you need to make sure that there's a cover on it. But the take-home message for this is that we want to take the time to scout and recognize and then reduce or eliminate larval habitat by employing practices that promote good drainage, filling water holding voids in the landscape. We're going to use something like sand, and then we're going to consider using a less toxic pesticide such as BTI. We're not going to be using anything super hard. I got a lot of this information from the CDC. I also got it from the National Pest Information Center, and then DHEC had tons of stuff. And then Clemson's Home and Garden Information Center, the HGIC, also has fact sheets on mosquitoes. So, I think y'all told me 20, 25 minutes.
Great job, Vicki. I can't even pronounce your name, much less some of these mosquitoes. So excellent.
Toxorhynchites, that one's my favorite.
So I think you got some of the questions in the chat, but let me go through and just I think there was maybe a couple that we didn't get to, but let me go back and scroll up here. So what is the importance of no-see-ums? Did you answer that?
Everything's got a job, even if we don't know what it is. I'm not super educated about no-see-ums because I guess it's only a problem for folks that live in like Pillion. I don't know what the purpose of them is. Everything's got something somewhere. I just don't know what theirs is.
And there's at least 2 people on here that say they're never going outside again without a hazmat suit on.
It feels like that some days. So I am one of those people that gets eaten up by them, even if I have on DEET. I am that person. So
you did talk about bug spray, but did you talk about the best spray for outside activities?
So the website, the question was about using repellents, and there is, how do I make it work? Can you guys see that?
Would you be able to post that link in the chat possibly?
Yeah. So there's a whenever you click on this link, it takes you to EPA's website, and you can find a repellent that's right for you. And so we want to know, hey, you're only going to be out there for 4 hours or less. We want to repel mosquitoes. You come down here and click on search, and then it gives you a list of stuff, and it tells you the hourly protection time for mosquitoes. It tells you the active ingredient in it, and it gives you the EPA numbers also. It all depends. There is no best that I can tell you. It's going to be one of those things where it depends on the individual person. It depends on their skin type, what their skin can tolerate. Some people can't wear anything, and they have to put repellent, like have it on their clothing, or they have to purchase clothing that's impregnated with product. So I can't give you a best. It all depends.
That is a valuable resource. And folks, that link is in the chat box as well. So what is the typical life cycle of a mosquito? I don't think this was discussed.
No, I didn't tell you guys exactly, just because I didn't have lots of time. So depending on temperature, let's see. There's on Bug Guide is the website that I was getting information from. For Aedes aegypti, it's anywhere from 7 to 10 days before there's egg hatch. And then depending on temperature, they can develop. So that's from egg hatch to first larval instar, which is just one of the times that the larvae molts to get bigger. That could be 7 to 10 days. Some of these are taking maybe 3 weeks total for their life cycle. And then they only live a handful of days, maybe a week, something like that, before they're done for. You have to remember that insects mostly live long enough to breed and lay eggs, and then that's it. So typically adult insects don't live very long. The way that they live long is going to be in a larval stage or in their pupal stage.
So when you say they don't live very long, are we talking 2 weeks? Are we talking a month? Are we talking 6 months? Like,
no, it's typically going to be less than a month.
wow.
But you have to remember that they're laying anywhere from a clutch of eggs to a few hundred eggs, and those eggs are constantly hatching. And then you constantly having a supply of adults. And so you're always going to have mosquitoes. And here in South Carolina, with the weather being so mild, there's not going to be a whole lot of room for the cold to kill the mosquitoes. Generally, it's not going to work. And so you've been outside on a nice day in December and got eaten up by mosquitoes. You can get eaten up by mosquitoes on a nice day in January. So we live in an area that has immense insect and disease pressure. So we're always going to have this type of thing to deal with. That's great news, isn't it, guys?
And last question I see here in the chat box is, what about bug zappers?
So bug zappers, they'll get the adults that are attracted to light that happen to be out at night, but it's a very small population and it's probably not going to get as many as you're hoping for. And it's the same thing with I hope nobody's a pest control operator. So if you're having your yard sprayed for mosquitoes, that's good for like a party or over a weekend, but that is not long-term management of mosquito populations, because you're not getting rid of the source and the habitat of the larvae. getting rid of the larval habitat is your key to managing and reducing adult populations. That's just the way that it works. And so it's one of those things where, I mean, it's larval habitat. Trying to get rid of the adults is not the way to manage these. Not this particular critter.
Gotcha. I think we have time for 2 more. I'll get you these 2, and we'll actually, it looks like they're 2. Here we go. I guess don't walk your dog at dawn and dusk.
So that tends to be a lot of your mosquitoes are nocturnal, and then you've got Aedes albopictus, which is diurnal, so it's going to be active during the day. But I guess you can go out at dawn. They tend to be less. But I've gotten eaten up by mosquitoes in the morning. I live in North Augusta, and I've had mosquitoes bother me in the morning. So I guess you got to go out in your hazmat suit all day long, even to walk the dog.
And then a final question here is, how do they survive in the tundra?
So insects are wired for a whole bunch of stuff, and I am not that person. So I'm an ID person. I don't know much about the physiology of a lot of these, but there's different things that happen. So with some of your insects, and it happens with critters like turtles and frogs and crustaceans, where depending what's in their body, what compounds are in their bodies can freeze. I mean, they'll have ice crystals that form in their fluid lines and in their organs and things like that. But when they thaw out, they still work. I don't understand how that works. I think it's sorcery, but I mean, it's just one of those things that's how those particular species have evolved, and that's how they work up there. I don't understand it, but that's how it works. I gave y'all a lot of that's just how it works.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. This was very educational. Hope everyone learned something, and hopefully we're not all afraid to go outside. But I will tell you, those that are watching, we are recording this. It'll be posted to our YouTube channel later in the week, so you can share that with anyone you would like. And we're currently streaming this live on our Facebook page. So please go over there and share that on your club pages and share that out to your personal pages. But thank you so much, Vicki. Coming up next week on June 14th, our next speaker will be Anna Rushton, the coordinator for securities with the South Carolina Attorney General's Office. The topic of her talk will be investment fraud and the steps South Carolinians can take to protect themselves. Coming back on June 21st, hopefully we don't have any technical issues with Mr. Walter Hughes talking about water. Our final CWRAP for this Rotary year on June 28th will be That's a Wrap with District Governor Pauline. And then July 5th, no CWRAP for July 4th. And then our first CWRAP of the new Rotary year on July 12th will be our new District Governor, Paul Walter. So we can unveil the wrap. That's a wrap, and then unveil the wrap. There we go. I'm all jokes today, folks. This is what happens when you don't do anything for 2 weeks. Here we go. With that being said, I'll conclude with the Rotary 4-way test, and we'll be on to the rest of the week. The things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a great Monday and a great week, Rotarians. Hopefully we'll see you in Myrtle Beach for the golf tournament later this week. But if not, we'll catch you back on Monday for the next conversation with Rotary Action People. Take care, folks. That's a wrap. Bye-bye.